the technical word to describe the rich communities of microbes that share our bodies and our ecosystems. They're critically important for life and health, not only for humans, but for most life forms. They're both organs of our body, for example, linking our intestines to our brain, and ecosystems that link us to other ecosystems. We are, in fact, pretty porous. A metaphor is not just words. A metaphor has power to awaken if it facilitates a flow of awareness and energy to an underlying reality. We live with microbes and fear them. Yet, microbes are responsible for fundamental communication and adaptation to change for so many aspects of life on the planet. So, dancing is a metaphor born in the microbial world and reflects the very meaning of life, one could say. So this year, we will go deeper into the metaphor. What does it mean to dance with bacteria and how to dance with our invisible companions? We have a very interesting program to find rhythms, motivations, inspiration to dance. So let me introduce first our coordinating team. I'm Mary Murray, a pharmacist and an artist from Wee Jasper in Australia. Arturo Quispe, my co-facilitator, is from Cuenca in Ecuador. He's coordinator of React Latin America, the organizer of this event, a pediatrician, a health visionary, and an activist for health, justice, and peace. Our rapporteurs, Peter Cameron from Sydney, Australia, a landscape painter and poet who will capture the essence of the session and write as beautifully about it as he did last year. Clever Calle from Cuenca, a gifted social communicator who is collecting and working with the material for later publication. And Juan Carlos Lopez from Cuenca is our technical and communication coordinator. I will briefly introduce each member of the panel now. Firstly, Johanna McBride from the Chorus of Women in Canberra, a musician. Sharon Field, a botanical artist from a small rural town in New South Wales, Australia. Stephen Sherwood from Ecuador, an agricultural scientist and fighter for restoring the health of our ecosystems and the food we grow. And two very special dancers and choreographers. Dr. Elizabeth Cameron-Dalman, who founded Miramu Creative Arts Centre in New South Wales, Australia, a dancer of immense experience, especially dancing in and with nature. Peng Xiaoyin from Taipei in Taiwan, formerly an agronomist and leader of dance ecology, which specializes in connection between nature's ecosystem and dancers' movements. And lastly, I would like to introduce Ulysses Freire, a doctor and a musician. We will close the meeting with his song performance. Thank you, Ulysses. Now, the dialogue will be held in English, but most of the material has been translated into Spanish and will be posted in the chat at the beginning of each speaker's presentation. For the videos, there is subtitles in either English or Spanish, so don't worry there. A recording will be sent to all participants at the end of the event. Please share your thoughts and reaction on the chat during the dialogue and also any questions you have, and we hope to get to them during the panel discussion. Well, we start with a call to reciprocity, to nurturing and caring for each other with the beautiful harmony of voices from the Chorus of Women in Australia, called Resounding the Harmony. A chorus of women began in 2003 when they sang a lament in the Australian Parliament House after the announcement of Australia's participation in the war in Iraq. It was a song of sorrow for the coming suffering. The focus of the chorus activities has now widened beyond peace on Earth to peace with Earth. Johanna McBride has been directing music for a chorus of women since 2003 and will introduce their video performance of Ubuntu. Johanna, please.
Thank you, Mary. So Ubuntu is not a very widely known word. I learned about it in 2005 when I attended a course on building peace and democracy. Ubuntu is an African philosophy about our shared humanity. Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu used Ubuntu as the basis of reconciliation after the horrors of apartheid in South Africa. One of the translations of Ubuntu was given by our course leader. I am who I am because of you. We are who we are because of each other. This simple and profound truth inspired me to write this song, which we have often sung in a chorus of women. As the climate crisis deepened, Desmond Tutu extended this concept to eco-Ubuntu, the truth about our total interconnectedness with the earth and all of nature. It's time for us humans to recognize that we're just a part of this wondrous web of life and to accept our responsibility for protecting it. Here's a short video of our singing of Ubuntu made by our artist friend, Sally Blake. This is our way of dancing with nature, weaving connections that have been severed, resounding the harmony.
Beautiful. Thank you, Johanna. So now we are going to continue with the principle of biodiversity, care of life with balance and harmony, a symphony given by Sharon Field with her beautiful interconnection of plants in 3,000 days and counting, plants and bacteria dancing together. Sharon lives in a small rural town in New South Wales, Australia, and with 20 years of experience as a volunteer firefighter, she has witnessed ecosystems in crisis and has become increasingly concerned about human impacts on the health of our planet's environment. She is a full-time botanical artist, passionate about engaging people to respond to climate change. Please, Sharon.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you everyone for letting me join your conference today. This is a real honour. For a long time, I've been concerned about environmental issues and the impact that people have on the natural environment. Sometimes this impact is positive, sometimes it's not so. Sometimes it's intentional and sometimes it's unintentional. But for years, scientists and activists have tried their best to bring about an awareness of the changing climate and the impact that that is having on the natural environment. But many people find it very, very difficult to understand these messages. The problems are just so big and so overwhelming. The result is that people switch off. They just don't know what to do. So I thought, okay, what can I do? At home, I planted hundreds of trees, decreased my use of plastics, and I've planted flowering plants and shrubs for the bees and for the birds. And I mulch my garden, trying to look after the microbiome as best as I can. I've also focused my botanical art on these issues. Still, I felt that I needed to do more. A report written by the United Nations at the end of 2021 warned that we need to keep the global temperature below a 1.5 degree Celsius increase, and that's 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, below that 1.5 degrees Celsius rise by 2030. And I thought about 2030, and at that time, 2030 was 3,000 days away. So as a botanical artist, I decided I'd set myself a challenge to do a drawing a day for 3,000 days, for the next 3,000 days, to highlight this issue. And I would call my artwork 3,000 Days and Counting. So these are the tools I use to tell my story in my dance with nature: paper, pens, and paint. The scroll, which is now more than 30 meters long, is called, as I said, 3,000 Days and Counting. And it's very much like a musical score. You can look at it as a dance of plants with their pollinators over the surface of our lands. The plants, insects, and fungi form the musical notes on that score. So while my artwork focuses more on what is happening on the surface of the soil, because that's what most people can see and relate to, I also try to talk with people about what is happening beneath the surface of the soil. Today, you're talking about the importance of bacteria and microbes. And you know that if we don't look after these bacteria, the dance of life on the surface of the earth will be affected and habitats will suffer. What happens on the surface of our soil depends so much on what is happening beneath the surface of the soil. And not many people are aware of that. People keep clearing the soil surface of plants, of mulch, and of leaves. They use sprays to kill the weeds. And these actions harm the insects, pollinators, bacteria, fungi, and microbes, who are all busy doing their own jobs. They're all working hard to keep a healthy balance in our environment. If our environment is healthy, then so are we. So using the scroll, I can talk with people of all ages and in a variety of countries about the importance of looking after our natural environment. And people start to understand that even the most ordinary plants might be under threat because of the impact of the changing climate. They learn about the negative impact that development can have on a local area. They learn about the critical importance of fungi as part of the web of life and part of the microbiome. They learn that without bacteria in our soils, the nutritional value of plants is much lower. People are also devastated to hear about the native plants that have become locally extinct and the flow-on effect that that has. And they become aware that plants, animals, insects, fungi, and bacteria all rely on each other. We need to listen to what the scientists are telling us. We need to respect our natural environment above and below the surface of the soil. And we can use the arts, music, dance, drawing, painting, and theatre to help us do this. Plants, animals, fungi, and bacteria, they can all survive without us, but we cannot survive without them and a healthy microbiome. If people appreciate the natural world, they're more likely to take care of it. So keep dancing with your bacteria so that people, along with other species, can continue in this dance of life. We all need to dance with bacteria. And while they're often invisible to us, microbiomes are an essential part of the rich biodiversity of our planet, Earth. You can help us look after them.
Thank you, Sharon. What a beautiful project. Thank you. Let me introduce Stephen Sherwood. He's going to take us deeper into the dance of life on the surface and inside the soil, the microbial dance in land care in promoting the health of soil microbiome and the community. Farming for life, from feeding plants to restoring the life force of Pachamama. Stephen is a farmer and an external researcher at Wageningen University. He has lived and worked in Latin America for 30 years, supporting knowledge and people-centered approaches to social change. Steve and his wife own a family-run organic farm in Ecuador, and both are active in grower and consumer food movements. He's currently leading a research program in human, non-human intersubjectivity, in ecological soil management and emergent food networks to enable more regenerative agriculture and food in the highland Andes. Stephen, please.
Mary, and it's a pleasure to be here with such an outstanding group and to be able to share some of the work we're doing, my colleagues at EcoRural, and also with colleagues working with Slow Food and Food for Change. And what we're interested in is really shifting the focus from not just feeding plants and feeding people, but to, in fact, restore the life force of the Pachamama in the sense of the Andean concept or Andean cosmovision. And it's a project of many, but what I think is important to begin is to be very clear about how our eating, right, our modern food, its production and consumption is taking us down in all kinds of ways that are also creative, but happen to be self-destructive. And I think it is important to be explicit about the socio-biological mechanisms of modernization in agriculture and food. And here I refer to one of my colleagues at Wageningen, Jan van der Ploeg, in his work, which talks about the commodification of life, of seeds and genetic resources, of land and soil, of time, the introduction of currency and financial systems as a way to intermediate human relationships, but also our relationships with nature, and the distancing that sort of facilitated this distancing of markets and the creation, the sort of creation of a new species, the producer and the consumer, and the dependence that this created on externally based knowledge for practitioners and on expertise, on specialized knowledge. And Jan Dal talks about how the emergence of these sort of four social but also biological mechanisms is what really gave birth to modernization. And along the way, the arrival of the consumer idiot, as we describe, not idiot in the Latin concept, right, of somebody who's not intelligent, but rather the sort of earlier Greek concept of the idiot as being an individual who's sort of antisocial, anti-democratic, self-serving, and charged with this goal of maximizing personal utility as sort of the highest form of human organization. And the impact that that has had on the what Ulrich Beck and colleagues talk about reflexive modernization, and how this has sort of generated these second order problems. You know, the earlier solutions have generated problems that were bigger than the original problems that were intended to be addressed. For example, through trying to control an insect via pesticide, or the emergence on Earth of the pesticide poisoned corpse, or overweight obesity right? And as now the leading pandemic on the planet, as food has somehow emerged as the leading cause of death, ironically, particularly through chronic disease like diabetes and hypertension. And the effects of the degradation on soils, on genetic resources, on the quality of life in terms of greenhouse gases, global warming, and overall ecosystem decline. And many people talk about globalization as being this process across the planet, but we also think of it as something that's embedded in localities across the globe and simultaneously reproduced, once again, in all kinds of creative yet self-destructive ways that unfortunately place into question, right, the future of human existence. As Sharon nicely summarized, many are arguing that we may have 30 years to get our farming and eating right if we have a hope of not hitting that critical point of inflection where the biosphere systematically oxidizes, where it burns off and the planet turns into a desert or a rock before it can go back to becoming a planet again. And of course, along the way, humans will disappear. And many are actually saying that's the probability that in about 150 years. And in our case, we see the phenomenon of Concagua. And I will show this in a video. It's the emergence of the subrock, the bedrock, the cemented ash, volcanic soils that in effect are the success of modernization. They're now the expected product. We know this is going to happen. And we've produced this over and over again, not just on the volcano where I live, called Ilalo. And you can see the photos on the right that show how Ilalo became a forest and then ended up being a desert over about 2 centuries. So we now have about 200,000 hectares of this emergent rock coming up through the soil as the biosphere and the soil are oxidized. And Concagua for us is very strategic for at least two reasons. One, it's where the poorest of the poor live, primarily highland indigenous Quechua people. But it also is very strategic in terms of climate change mitigation. Because we have oxidized its carbon, it has a tremendous capacity of increasing terrestrial carbon accumulation. So I want to take you to Ilalo for a few minutes. Bienvenidos a la Luna. Esta es una zona de ceniza cementada y así comenzó todo. Así comenzó el planeta más bien. Todo era mineral. Es el único animal capaz de vivir aquí fueron las bacterias hace 4.2 mil millones de años. Las bacterias comenzaron a hospedar estas zonas y podían alimentarse de esto. Y de las bacterias evolucionaron hongos, evolucionaron protozoas y hace 700 millones de años comenzaron las plantas. Y así nació todo. En verdad, toda esta zona que vemos se formó un gran bosque de montaña. Un bosque muy denso, un bosque nublado, lleno de animales, lleno de raíces. Y debido a la actividad humana, en los últimos 2 siglos y medio, se han ido primero terminando con el bosque para mandar carbón a la ciudad de Quito, que queda apenas 40 kilómetros de acá. Y este bosque se convirtió a carbón para la energía de las cocinas, para calentar las casas y para preparar los alimentos de la ciudad. Luego entraron en un sistema de sobrepastoreo en una hacienda por cientos de años para exportar pieles a Europa y poco a poco terminaron con los suelos y volvemos a donde estuvimos antes, a este material mineral. Y es bien difícil bailar con las bacterias en este contexto, porque en verdad solo hay un grupo pequeño de las bacterias. Las bacterias que se criaron en un ámbito sin oxígeno, las bacterias que se dedican a alimentarse de los minerales de la ceniza cementada, y no este conjunto que tenemos hoy en la vida microbial que efectivamente gobierna nuestro planeta.
¿Y hay alguna forma de traer vida al suelo?
Claro, a través de la inoculación de microorganismos que hacemos con el compostaje.
¿Y cómo es la receta para hacer el compost?
Bueno, la receta utilizamos normalmente baldes o puede ser sacos o carretillas. Entonces le pondríamos una carretilla de estiércol por 3 carretillas de pasto verde, pasto recién cortado, por 6 carretillas de material seco. Entonces el material seco puede ser la viruta o cualquier material de las ramas y los árboles cortado. ¿Y para qué sirve este compost?
Este compost, cuando ya está llevado el proceso que necesita descomponerse, pues nosotros ya le llevamos a las camas para empezar a sembrar. Cuando sembramos, hacemos trasplante, entonces ahí le vamos regando para que vaya la vida al suelo nuevamente.
¿Y solo le ponen en sólido?
No, también le preparamos en líquido.
Ah, entonces vamos a ver el líquido, cómo
Vamos
le
a ver.
preparan. Ahora vamos a recoger más o menos una pala de este material, de este compost que ya tiene 3 meses, ya está maduro. Y vamos a llevarlo al líquido para extraer todos los microorganismos que están acá adentro. En este caso le vamos a llenar la mitad, unos 100 litros. Entonces le ponemos el agua. Y por otro lado tenemos de este tubo con esta manguera, que esto simplemente es una bomba, un compresor de aire para oxigenar el agua, ¿no? Y haga burbujas y a través de estas burbujas es lo que va a ir saliendo los microorganismos de la materia orgánica. Entonces tenemos la funda colgada acá con el material y el aireador, ¿no? Entonces de eso le sumergimos y vamos a prender la bomba. Conectamos la bomba, entonces vemos que empieza a burbujear, empiezan las burbujas. Entonces con este movimiento de las burbujas logramos extraer toda la biología que está dentro de este compostaje, ¿no? Toda la biología que se ha reproducido durante los 2, 3 meses que le hemos tenido ahí, vamos a extraerle y pasarle a líquido. Entonces, y yo le quería preguntarte cómo le usan eso o cuánto tiempo le dejan ahí.
Bueno, después de que está esto 2 horas, ahí le tenemos que aplicar. Pero tenemos que hacer el mismo día porque luego ya se muere.
Ah, en el mismo día le aplica. ¿Y cómo le aplicas a los cultivos?
Nosotros lo aplicamos con la regadera, le vamos aplicando en donde vamos a sembrar.
Ya.
Cuando ya está sembrado en las flores, en las hortalizas.
Una gran equivocación que tenemos en la agricultura hoy día es que pensamos que es el suelo que alimenta las plantas, pero en verdad este planeta se formó al revés. Fueron las plantas que nacieron de los hongos, comenzaron con la capacidad de fotosíntesis, de cosechar de energía solar y traer toda esta energía al suelo para multiplicar los microorganismos que podían crear este gran colchón de esponja de suelo que hace posible el oxígeno, que hace posible la vida. Entonces, nuestro gran trabajo es devolver o convertir esta roca en suelo. ¿Cómo lo podemos hacer? Es con la chakra. Estamos aprendiendo cómo nuestras chakras se pueden convertir de fuentes de carbón a sumideros de carbón. Y solo así podemos lograr que este paisaje se vuelva a ser la fuente de oxígeno, la fuente de vida que fue antes. Bien. So it's amazing to see that farm is on top of a lunar landscape, including the farm that's behind me, and how you can transform that lunar landscape into both a productive area, but also an area that begins to repair human relationship with the more than human. And one of our inspirations, fortunately, in the Andes, is this Andean cosmovision. And I think in other localities, for example, in Australia, we also have other indigenous peoples and traditions with which we can engage to connect and to learn and to begin to question our relationships with the planet, with one another. In particular, I want to emphasize three Andean notions of the Pachamama, the Earth Mother, as an infinitely sort of a intersubjective, interconnected life form. And it's amazing as we work at Eco Rural to give Andean women access to microbiology through microscopy, how they speak and talk about discovering the Pachamama visually. They've always felt it, right? And they've interacted with it, but for them to address it explicitly and to learn how to, like the woman Yoli in the photo, in the image, or in the video, how she can learn to manage functional groups, to rehabilitate the planet in ways that are a little bit more strategic and successful. And this notion of sumak kalsai, my mother-in-law, who was indigenous, always talked about sumak kalsai, is when the baby is born and it's slapped on the butt and it screams. That's the sumak kalsai, that sort of visceral voice of life. And that the task of life is not progress, but rather keeping that viscerality alive throughout your entire life, the ability to feel. And so this sumak kalsai, taking care of that inner force of life. And then the Andean chakra, this sort of agroforestry system of multiple species as a site of encounter, as a site of the dance among the human and the more than human, where we can begin to feel and repair these relationships. So we look at Andean cosmovision as not something touristic, not something to take a photograph of, but rather a way of feeling, a way of being practical. And our premise is that biology and ecosystems can be more than fertilizers and pesticides and markets. And that this challenge of ecological literacy, of helping humans precipitate the abstract and be able to understand, at least minimally, the principles of how ecosystems organize and how to manage and repair them, because we don't have much time. We can't afford to fail with our experiments. And then this sort of farmer-led and eater-led experimentation of mobilizing our individual and collective interests, our know-how, but also our need in ways that come up with viable solutions. And so I want to end by highlighting concepts that have been very helpful for me in making sense of this. And I refer to Donna Haraway, the outstanding ecologist and feminist scholar, and her concepts of composting and of responsibility. When she speaks of composting, it's sort of collapsing these dichotomies between the human and the more than human, and understanding those relationships and connecting with those synergies. And when she speaks to responsibility, it is this affective capacity to feel, once again, something that I think that we've often lost, at least in the Western world, in the industrial world. And the cognitive ability as well, to understand, and the competence that we need to be able to repair these ecosystems. And then thirdly, the practice of the dance, actually putting to work the sweat and the tears and all the effort we need to repair this earth. And I'll end with that, with a photograph of a gaggle of sort of the Food for Life pioneers, of many of the hundreds of farmers with whom we're working. But this particular group is one that's been inspiring for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. How wonderful. And as you said, How to dance with microbes. Well, now we have a real wonderful gift. It's a dance performance called Reflecting Wiriwa, the Aura of Bodyscape and Land. This is a collaboration between Elizabeth Dallman's Miramu Dance Company and Peng Xiaoyin's Dance Ecology Group. I think it's much better, Elizabeth and Xiaoyin, if you introduce yourselves and your performance and the significance of the place where it happened. Please, Elizabeth, Xiaoyin.
Yes, I'm Elizabeth Cameron Dowman. I founded Australian Dance Theatre in 1965, and it's one of the longest existing contemporary dance companies in this country. But then for the last 35 years, I was called to this beautiful property, Miramu, which is on the shores of Lake George, but we give it now, it's one of its indigenous names, Wiriwa. And here I have developed my practice of dancing in and with nature. And the Mother Nature has taught me the most. And I'm humbled by the great lessons that we need to learn.
Hello, I'm Peng Xiaoyin and I'm from Taiwan. And my company name is called Dance Ecology, which combines the idea about dance and ecology. This is also a gift from Elizabeth Dolman because she is my mentor and totally being inspired by her. And my background is I major in agronomy in my university. So nature and dance are always my big interest in and love. And so since I found Dance Ecology, we keep connection with Australia and with Elizabeth Dolman and with her Miramu Dance Company. So we keep our international collaboration every year. So the beginning of the project you will see today is actually it's from 2014, and we made a theater work with Australian and Taiwanese and also Malaysian dancer and choreographer. It's called Mirror Image. Its main idea is about how nature reflects our human life. So after that, we want to following on. So we decide to make dance film. Sorry, I forgot to introduce. My work is not only create a live performance, also create another art form called dance film, which is using the film language and power of filming to show the power of dance. So in 2017, we decide to make a dance film on Lake George, Wiriwa. And the bunch of dancers, including Miramu Dance Company and my company. So these people we dancing on Lake George every year. So the ancient lake for us, it's like our mother. Yeah, and Elizabeth's like our dancing mother. So we decide to dance together on site. And following you will see is just a 5 minutes clip. And the total length of the dance film is about 30 minutes. And we choose different side, different feel on Lake George. And all the dancers, they create the movement and reaction very spontaneously, like how we human being or like we from our animal perspective, how we react directly to the mud, to the fence, and to the grass. So yeah, I hope you enjoy our film. Yeah.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. thank you, Elizabeth and Xiaoyin, for sharing this powerful, wonderful piece. And now I think we will go for a change of tone. We're going to move to something a little bit more reflective. In May this year, on the edge of this special lake, Wiriwa, we recorded a conversation between Elizabeth and Xiaoyin about what it means to dance and how it feels to dance, how to dance in nature, to get more into the heart of this metaphor and learn from their experience. We have made this video and it has Spanish subtitles, so please, Juan Carlos.
I think one of the first performances I created and presented here at Miramir Creative Arts Centre was called So, In Search of Sophia. And with that, I felt that we all needed to return back to nature, as the mother of us all. Sophia is the goddess of wisdom in our Western culture. And for me at that time, it was the wisdom of Mother Earth, because we were getting, I felt, as a human race, further and further divorced from our nature, from the natural environment. And after a series of meditations where I sat down quite close to here, I saw on the bank of the dam a spiral pathway. And so we created that as an installation. And my first dance was the journey through the spiral. I imagined I was going to the depths of the earth to receive some answers to big questions. And I realized as I was dancing that I had to let go of my identity as Elizabeth. I found that in that moment of the sky above me and the earth below and the wind blowing across my face and asking that big question, that it was something much bigger than just little Elizabeth. And it was an extraordinary experience. I felt I had become like a channel, and that my audience members were witnesses to what was happening, and that I was performing for them as much as I was for myself. And at the end of that dance, I rolled down to the pond at the bottom of the bowl of the dam and actually mudded myself with earth. And then I walked slowly into the water to cleanse myself again. So it was like a performance ritual. And that was one of the biggest lessons I had as a choreographer, as a dancer, and that has stayed with me for all my other productions in nature.
Well, I think it's so wonderful to hear Elizabeth sharing her feeling when she dances in the nature with different elements, the mud, the set you create, the spiral, and also the water that make her all of a sudden feel lose the ego, very connected with the whole thing. And I think it's one of the privilege as a dancer. Yes. Yeah, because when you dance really focusing, well, first of all, we need to have a very good training, the basic training that our body can become a very good channel to express more deeply, to our audience. Well, but once you have this kind of training and you have the chance to really dance, especially for us, dance in nature, because you can always be inspired in big thing and the tiny thing into your body. For me, it's a very powerful moment when you realize, you say losing of ego. For me, sometimes I will feel I'm not only the human being, I'm part of the world, part of the nature. Yeah, is that what you feel also?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we become very aware of all the other creatures around us. And that can include a blade of grass. And then all of a sudden, a bird flies past, or there might be a little insect. And we realize as we are performing our dance, we are not just like in a theater with just a bare light on us. No, we are surrounded by other living beings. It becomes a very important realization, and that we, as a dancer, however tall or big we are, we're actually a very small element in this other big and wonderful, and I mean wonderful, universe. And so we dance with the other creatures and to another orchestra of bird sounds, wind sounds, and other creature sounds as well. So it's an extraordinary experience. And as the Dalai Lama said once, that it's very important that we go back to nature, because we are then reminded of our own human nature.
So let me ask you both. It's not so easy to think of the microbial world. It's invisible. We are only beginning to understand the immense vastness of it and its fundamental importance for life itself, and that we are more than human cells. We are already a superorganism made of bacteria and other microbes, as is everything around us. What would you say to people about learning how to dance with bacteria or microbes? What is helpful in beginning to think into that world and to move with it? What is the importance of movement? And, you know, how important is this for every human?
That's quite a big question, Mary. But just a few flash ideas came. One is flexibility. And of course, in our dance training, that's number one. We have to learn to be flexible. And then if we translate that not only to our muscles and the physical part of our body, the more that we dance, the more we're in touch with our mind and with our spirit. And that flexibility moves through all of those different parts of who we are. And I think, I know that when I dance, I feel like I get closer to other levels of existence or other dimensions, not just the ones that we can analyze or even talk about, but I become more and more aware that there's a lot of other wonderful, dimensions that are out there. And I think the world that you're talking about, the microisms and the bacteria life, that is something that I think we can begin even physically to come in touch with more often.
I want to share something very simple. For me, it's through your breath. Well, everyone need to breathe, yeah, and especially it's very important in dance because we need to using the whole body. I think for the other arts the same, like musician and yeah. But anyway, in dance, breathing, it's also all the time dancing. Actually, during the pandemic, we need to be very careful about our breath. This is a very big reminding to the dancers. Yeah, of course, at that time during the quarantine, we are safe at home and we can improvise in our little space. Well, but I just all of a sudden feel that everything, as through the breathing and the breathing into your movement, it's like the bridge to visible environment or even invisible thing. Yeah. And I want to share another kind of level. It's because you see we are kind of a mature dancer. Maybe in front of you I shouldn't say that, but I'm a dancer over 40 and becoming a mother, and yeah, probably also during pandemic, I think a lot of because I need to care about my child's health, and also feeling more physically and mentally into my body, and according to all our ecological thinking to my previous choreography, I start to feel the things in both different way. One is micro, that Elizabeth say, when you dance in nature, sometimes you feel how tiny human is. But other thing, you want your performer, when they are in the big nature, they still there. So you need to make yourself very big. But the big is not the ego big. It's like you understand you are connected with the macro. So I learned from my master that she will ask us to stand still or feel that for a few minutes, and then your audience can through you the channel to feel the macro landscape. But sometimes during my improvisation, when I go very detailedly, I start to feel very, I would say it's a microwave. So I shared to Mary, probably I feel my microbial system are driving me. Sometimes I feel it's very difficult, but because now I'm mother, so I try to explain this in more funny way to my student or my daughter. Actually, dancing with the bacteria, it's very funny. Funny and encouraging things. Yeah, it's not, oh, we fear of the things we cannot see. It's embarrassing and feel sympathy. I think this is all from dance training. We need to learn that. Yeah, with your partner, with all the different artists in theater, and now even bigger in the nature, with all the things in the nature. Yeah.
Let me ask you one final question. So you're saying that dance really is the big connector, micro to macro, across art forms. Have you got any reflections on the importance to humans going way back in indigenous cultures, the importance of dance? Have you got a few reflections on that?
I believe dance is the big connector. When we're born, the first thing we do is move and cry. The first way to communicate is with movement, is with dancing. And in all indigenous cultures and in our own ancestral cultures, dance was the most important way of connecting with each other, of passing on knowledge, working out different strategies and different ways of living. And still today in many indigenous cultures, especially in Australia, our First Nations people, dance and storytelling and music and song are the way that they pass down the big stories of their culture. And I think that we have an enormous amount to learn and to remember from our own indigenous cultures how important that way of living, that way of passing on knowledge, that way of connecting to the land and to the cosmos. So easily we threw that away, and more importantly, we now need to regain that way of thinking so that we live in harmony with all levels of existence and with Mother Earth.
She already said everything.
Yes, it's very beautiful.
But yeah, I just want to mention because dance is embodiment. Yeah, so I think I will encourage every one of you try to dance a little bit every day. It makes you, well, not always happy, but it's about your expression. And once you can expression, and you can open more deeper sensation. Yeah, and it helps a lot mentally or physically. Yeah.
Thank you both very much, Elizabeth Delman Cameron and Peng Xiaoying.
Thank you for sharing those quite deep insights into your practice, your long experience. So now we have some questions for the panel. And I'd like to start with you, Elizabeth and Xiaoyin. So do you think dance as a metaphor can also embrace the conflicts in relationship between people and bacteria? How do you think about this in your work? Elizabeth? You're on mute, Elizabeth. You're on mute, Elizabeth.
Is that good now?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. Yes, as a dancer, dance is such an important part of my life that it helps me, I think, to reflect on both our life inside the body. You know, as Grace was talking about the breath, we're very conscious about our breathing and how we regulate that. And it's about being more aware of how our body functions, and particularly in movement. And I think that helps us to reflect the outside world and the invisible, under the earth, how that, I think we have a curiosity to understand other realms of existence and other ways of learning. So I think dance is a very good metaphor for this particular big subject that we've all been sharing today, because I think it helps us navigate the inner and the outer on many different levels of how we live. So I think it inspired me a great deal in my further work for the dance, and particularly as I'm doing quite a lot of writing now, trying to write about dance, which is finding words for a movement is not always easy, but it's the same thing, I think, to talk about the microbial world. It's an invisible world, but we need to find ways of incorporating that and discussing that. So thank you for your questions.
Grace?
Yeah, following Elizabeth, I strongly recommend her upcoming book called Nature Moves, in that it's all her practice and everyone can follow in her instruction to feel how to be symbiosis with nature, dancing in the nature, dancing with bacteria, also even embrace the conflict. I want to share my own embodiment about the difference in, like, not always in harmony. as a professional dancer, we all probably have experience that when our body are under attack by virus or bacteria, that when we are sick, but we have a job, we need to perform. So I think before that, when I'm younger, I always thinking about, well, the human's strong mind can help us to survive. So even though I have experience, I have a big production when I'm on not in my company, so I need to dance a lot on a very big stage, and at that day I have a very high fever, but I still can finish my work. So I feel my whole body under very strange excitement. Well, but I think after this conversation with dancing with our friend bacteria, I start, and also after pandemic, I start to thinking in different way that maybe it's not your human mind to control or to lead in your body. Probably it's some your microbial world inside your body and negotiate with outside. So yeah, so probably I think it's my mind controlling my body, but maybe not, because it's all together, you know what I mean? Yeah, probably in scientific way you know better, but I think in dancing, because as a dancer, the body is our channel, it's our tool to express everything. So yeah, so sometimes I will encourage everyone, whether you are a dancer or not, sometimes when you are sick, you don't want to move, but you can feel, but you still need to walk or go to drink, doing the daily movement, you can feel what's the conflict in your body, how you negotiate with the invisible things. Yeah, that's my my feedback.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. Awareness and embodiment, holding them together. Well, Johanna, how do you think about this aspect in your work and the chorus's work?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. So one thing that I got from Grace is this idea of mind over body, and also this hubris, actually, that we humans, we have this wonderful ability to think, and we are the crown of creation. And we are only just learning. I mean, I know nothing about my body, you know, and we are only just learning to come to terms with the fact that it is actually nature that rules, and we are just a part of it. And in music, so as in nature, I believe the natural state is harmony. However, it's not harmony all the time, because, you know, nature has storms and wild weather, and music has storms and wild weather as well. And the main thing is to find ways of resolving the conflict. So, and in music, you say, when there's a dissonance and it resolves into harmony. So that's the natural thing, you know. And so, I mean, we had a big story in A Chorus of Women, which was called The Gifts of the Furies. And in The Gifts of the Furies are the spirits of earth, and they rise up and they're seriously furious because humans keep breaking the laws of nature. And they say, I bring drought and fire under filthy skies. I torch the farmland, I scorch the forest, I raise the oceans, I drown the cities, I spare no human being. Glenda wrote that inspired by an old Greek myth. And really, the story that we want to tell in music is that we have to find ways of returning back into humility, into harmony, into promising Mother Nature, Mother Earth, that we will follow her laws. So that's my take.
Thank you. Now I want to ask Stephen and Sharon, practicing agroecology and permaculture and regenerative farming are ways to create contact zones between humans and the microbial world. So what role does being aware of and feeling their existence play as communication and contact strategies? Stephen? You're muted, Stephen.
There we go. So I think the critical word there is practice. One of the frustrations that I have with agroecology is how it's being represented by non-practitioners, academics, sort of this process of co-optation. It's being categorized in ways that feels very different than people who work with the land. For example, they always return it to the sort of, let's say, a human-human debate around Marxist perspective of farmers against the capitalist system. And we're not against that, but that it's very different than how it's experienced in quiet, in tears, and in this sort of struggle that I think was just described by Joanna. And I think this process of humility, before nature, this constant song, but also the storm that one deals with when they're working with nature and the plants and it is critical. And I think that's something that's lost. For me, farming is pre-representational. It's an emotion. You can't really put a category on it. It's something that has to be, it's like giving birth, although I'm not a woman, but it's sort of, you have to give birth to a farm every day. And every day you walk out your door, you can't really pre-plan it. You don't know what you're going to be doing at the end of the day, because a living farm takes on a life of its own. And you're at service to the plants and the weather and the microbes. So what I feel is the practice is essential. Now, I wouldn't suggest that everybody be a farmer. The people in slow food work in a very rich way around organoleptics, right, around flavor. And if you think of taste as being the social of organoleptics, and I think that they work with this representational experience that humans can have with food that connects them with their present, with their culture, with their identity, that we lose when you enter the world of ultra-processed foodstuffs and food derivatives. And so I think practice in the different ways of producing, but eating and experiencing this, what gives us energy, right? This essential life force that we have through food is a great opportunity. And I think it's critical that people experience that it is not intermediated through others. It has to be a very direct way. And when I listen to the musicians and the dancers, I can completely relate to the way that they experience the microbes in a way that feels like farming.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And Sharon, we're almost out of time, but have you got, can you share something from your experience?
Yeah, from my perspective, just building a slightly different perspective on what Stephen said. From my perspective, I see people today living lives that are such a long way away from the natural world. They live in towns and cities. They often only see natural environments on a screen. They're not out there in nature. And this is a fundamental underpinning of a lot that I do in my artwork. So, and I really hope that through this artwork, it helps play a small role in re-educating people about the important links that we need to have with the world, not only on top of the soil, but also beneath the soil. Because plants and microbes already know how to communicate with each other. They've been doing it for millions of years. They've got that down fairly efficiently. They dance with each other all the time. So we need to listen to them. We need to feel their energy, and we need to join in the dancing with them, not against them, but with them. Because if we do this, plants and microbes are going to be very happy with us. and we will live much happier lives, I think, as a result. So we shouldn't think of ourselves as being separate from nature. We're a part of that really rich web of life that surrounds us, and we need to be much more conscious of that. And my feeling is that through the visual arts, through Johanna's music, Elizabeth and Grace's dancing, and Stephen's work, that all of these things start coming together in a really important way. As I've said before, all of these things in nature would be very happy without us. We cannot survive without them.
Well said. Okay, now we're almost out of time. I would like to encourage you all to write to us and share your thoughts and your questions, because this is a process where a really ongoing process, and we want to come back to it next year and in other forums. So please do that. Now I'm going to invite Arturo to share your reflections on the meeting and to conclude the meeting. Please, Arturo.
Thank you very much, Mary. This has been really a dialogue between greatly diverse people united by hearts, feelings, imagination, and extraordinary ability in their way of life. Coming from different scenarios, geographies, cultural, and histories, you have revealed similar thoughts, feelings, hopes, and challenges for our times. Confluence energy, sensations, and vision toward a libertine way of thinking, feeling, and living. We come to the meeting committing to containing the dispossession and the breaking of the tissue of life, rushing to recover solidarity, care for others, the challenge of love, tenderness, and listening. These are the rewards in making the tiny visible. We experience an encounter of encouragement, an invitation to walk and dance to the rhythm of science, arts, and life. The multiversal sensitive encounter radiated a contagious inner vibration in the construction of a metaphor for now and tomorrow, a metaphor of peace, a response to the current moment to contain ecocide, to wake up, be enthusiastic, and live. The voices of the Women Choir for Peace opening this meeting remind us that life is sustained by cooperation, unity, and diversity, and human interdependence with other forms of lives and with nature. Why do we dance was the question. Images, words, songs, and dance. Paintings, leaves that are not carried by the wind, but stopped in time, that capture the whisper, converted into musical notes. They make up a symphony and dance in, from, and through life. We understood that dancing is a path of connection, learning, symbiosis, and celebration of life. Feeling and being aware of the presence of the other is the initial step to understanding the whisper of other creatures, of ears, of invisible beings, of wind, of water, of nature. Dancing with bacteria to the realm of science allows us to learn to fly towards infinity, adapted to diverse times and geographies, to experience and understand the roles of bacteria and microbes in preserving the vitality of the soil, the air, and our bodies, to feel the microbes' connection with joy, sadness, healthy food, and the essential functions for living. Reflection on the like is a generous, selfly dance of hope on the way toward of balance and harmony, without stopping along the way, returning to the air to recognize ourselves as air, fire, and water, beautiful images impregnate our cells, sculptures that generate words that sing and dance, that vibrate from with and then inside and outside, inviting us to act now, not tomorrow. This is science, this is art, this is life. It's difficult to establish difference between the different moments of this interactive and vital encounter, because it is generated in comparison with the most purest bacterial microbial style, a confluence of emotions that propel action and responses, unifying, supportive, and loving. The dance, the choirs, the voices stimulate our intimate fibers of sensitivity, provoke reaction, gazing and feeling, creativity, mobility, and hope. Thank you for sharing your interiors. Thank you for sharing your experience, energy, vibration, and dreams, for teaching us and recognizing us as human, members of nature. There were and will be silence, listening to our return to nature, to feel and recognize ourselves as part of the whole as we reconnect. While the dance of life continues to the rhythm of the movements, the voices, the sounds, and those hearts, the bacteria that beat all over the world and all over our bodies. Come, arise, please. Let's join our voices of hope and freedom.
Tantos mundos para andar, cada nueva realidad y un humano que transita en busca de su eternidad. Un planeta y no hay más, nuestra temporalidad y las Naciones Unidas esta historia han de contar. Hablarán de pueblos sabios, su existencia y corazón, que el comercio no se impuso a su conciencia y su razón. Y vendrán nuestros ancestros sonrientes a entonar bellos cantos de la tierra que nos enseñan a amar. Vengan, lleguen, juntemos nuestras voces este día. Todos los seres de la madre tierra y de la vida, que no hay peor pandemia que el negar una sola salud sin resistencia en libertad. Vengan, lleguen, juntemos las historias este día. Todos los seres pequeños y grandes de la vida, la metáfora de guerra, de cambiar el relato del amor y la armonía de triunfar. Vengan, lleguen, juntemos nuestras voces este día. Seres de la madre tierra y de la vida, la metáfora de guerra hay que cambiar, el relato del amor y la armonía de triunfar. Vengan, lleguen, juntemos nuestras voces este día. Hagamos nueva historia este día.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.